No mai haere mai, welcome. This is our first of four sessions. We're going to talk today about what support work is and some of the principles and frameworks that sit underneath support work. So I'm Ainsley. I am the CEO of Flying Kites, and I've been running this organisation for about 5 years, and working in disability support of one kind or another for about 20, including starting my career as a support worker to pay my way through uni. And I'll let you introduce yourself, Olivia.
Kia ora. I am Olivia, and I I'm currently a sociology student who is interning with Flying Kites, and so we've gotten to work together to create these workshops for you. And I was also a support worker, and so yeah, we're just working together to share our knowledge, and
Comment.
yeah, really excited to share that with you.
Awesome. So what we're going to do, we're going to get started and see how our conversation goes. So this is kind of what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about the captain and the crew as a metaphor for support work. We're going to talk about enabling good lives, the social model of disability, and kind of different kinds of support work roles, as well as kind of how they fit in real life. So when we get started, we're going to start on that kind of the frameworks, the principles, the key things. Each of these we could probably talk about for half a day in their own entirety,
Mm.
but we're giving you the kind of snapshot version of some of the key things that might be helpful in embarking on support work roles of one kind or another.
Yeah, so if you love a good framework like we do, you might enjoy this. So this is titled A Captain and Their Support Crew. And so we just thought that this would be a really good metaphor for support work. And if you look closely, you'll see that the captain is identifiable by the orangey red headphones that they're wearing and the compass that they're holding and the map, and they're all also wearing an invisible disabilities lanyard, and there's a cane on the floor, and yeah, the crew are doing various tasks, and there's someone waiting on the dock, and there's also a cat curled up there. Lovely. So, as we're thinking of support work, it is really important that we understand what kind of position we are in. And so, we would like to emphasize that you are not the captain, or we as support workers are not the captains. Um, and in the same way that a captain relies on their crew to get the boat moving and reach their destination, disabled folks rely on their support workers to help them get to where they want to be. And of course, if you're already a support worker, which I'm sure some of you are, then you're probably already on someone's crew. And if you're not a support worker, you are most likely that person waiting on the dock with their kete, waving to the captain and the crew. Now, this particular boat is more of a ship, and the weather looks sunny and cheerful, and the captain clearly has the resources to have a ship of this size and already has some crew on board and a cat. Each captain will look different, and their disability will present differently. They will have different resources and needs. And as support workers, we don't always know what kind of boat we'll be stepping onto. We won't know the exact forecast or the weather conditions. So support workers are crew members who are incredibly important part of their captains' lives. And these lives are just like our own. They're often governed by things that we can't control, like policy changes, family things, and health scares. And as a support worker, you might work on multiple people's boats, so you might have multiple captains. But the key thing to remember is that no captain is the same, and every captain has their own process and their own destination and their own crew and own ways of doing things. And so, yeah, that's the main thing. You are not the captain. You are part of the captain's support crew.
Okay. So when we think about that as a kind of a model, and thinking about the ways that we can utilize support workers if you are the captain trying to get your ship to wherever your destination is. One of the things that exists in this disability kind of context is the principles of enabling good lives. So about 15 years ago, the government said, oh, maybe we should try and do some things differently in the disability support space. And they got together this wonderful group of disabled people and whānau members, government people, organisational people, random community members, and said if we could design disability support that actually best met the needs of disabled people, what would that look like? And they came up with these 8 principles. And so these 8 principles are now embedded in almost every disability support contract across government services. They kind of have been adopted by the government to differing degrees of passion at different stages. But they are things that every government contracted disability support service has promised to do when they help disabled people. And I think that they're really a great thing to keep in mind when you go about thinking about support work. Some of them are pretty obvious. Relationship building. That means we should be in relationship with people and not treat them like they're objects or unimportant. Easy to use. We would love it if the disability system was easy to use. People knew what they were entitled for. They knew how to get what they needed. Those ones beginning early is also it is beginning early at kind of when kids are young, but it's also beginning your journey of, getting ready to be more independent or leave school or retire as early as we can so people have the support and framework to do that well. The things we particularly wanted to draw some attention to was person-centered. So person-centered is this concept that the disabled person should be the center of their support, the center of their life, which comes back to this concept of being the captain, right? So it's about saying that we as support workers don't get to decide how you go about your life. We don't get to decide what is right for your life. You are the captain of the ship. The services, the support, the life that you have is centered around you and what you want. It can be helpful to combine that with this principle of ordinary life outcomes. So when we think about ordinary life outcomes, that's about saying that whatever someone is doing, that we're trying to achieve what everyone else is trying to achieve. That independence and joy and relationships are most people's goals in some way. And so when we often find disabled people fill their week with really busy work. They go to the library every week. They go to an art class even though they don't really like art. And they just kind of are trying to just be out. And some people, that's what they actually want. And some people, it's just because nobody else knows what to do with them. So the concept of ordinary life outcomes is not many of us just go to the library to walk through the library and walk back out. Most of us go there because we want something from the library. Most of us go to an art class because we actually enjoy art. Most of us hang out with those friends because we actually like those friends. So ordinary life outcomes is stops and says, why are you doing the activities you're doing? What is the purpose of it? And is that the same kind of purpose that most people do those activities for? And it's okay if you really love the physical space of being in the library and you like the way the light patterns on the floor, that's fine. You can go for that reason, but have a reason. Go for some purpose, not just to be busy. And the concepts of mana enhancing and self-determination are around ensuring that, again, the disabled person is the captain, that they get to make decisions, they get to decide the life they want to live, to the best extent that they are capable, and that when we support them to make decisions, when we support them to go about tasks, we're doing it in a way that is as respectful of that person, as kind of equal with that person as possible, so that there isn't we're minimizing any power imbalance, we're minimizing any kind of you will do what we say because we say it, and trying to get onto a place where actually the disabled person is the captain. The captain is the most important job on the ship. Without a captain, you don't know where you're going. Without a captain, nobody knows what to do. And so All of these principles really align to this concept that if you are a support worker, these can help you think about the way you go about your work and how you make sure that you are adding the most value that you possibly can. And it can also really help if you reach a point where you're stuck, where you don't really know, you're going through the motions because you've just reached a place of plateau. Going back to these principles and going, actually, what are the ordinary life outcomes? Or, kind of how are we, you know, achieving this person's self-determination, building them up to be the best version of them they can be, can really help make sure that you, I guess, add the most value as a support worker. Um, and if you are a person who likes these sorts of frameworks, the Enabling Good Lives website is a lovely place to go. It talks more about each of these principles, and it's got some little videos about how how people go about their work, how these principles have been in life, and some tools and things. So if you like a framework, go have a look. And if you don't need to know anymore, that's totally fine too. The next model that we wanted to draw your attention to was the social model of disability. So we used to live in a world of the medical model of disability. And in the medical model of disability, we would say that a disabled person is sick, there's something wrong with them, they have a disorder, um, and our job is, as society, to make that person less disabled, to fix them. And in that model, it says that that problem is the disabled person's fault. It says that they are wrong and society is right. We have now, thankfully, largely parked that medical model, and we try and live in a world of the social model of disability. The social model of disability says that actually what is disabling is attitudes, the physical environment, the systems that live in our society. So it's not actually that a person shouldn't have autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy. Um, that person is that person. What actually is the problem is the way that we respond to that person. So the fact that a person who uses a wheelchair can't get into a cafe, that is not actually a problem of the person who uses a wheelchair. That is a problem that the cafe is not accessible. That we live in a world where, kind of people can't navigate society if they don't have all of the skills and capabilities of, kind of the average member of society. So in the social model of disability, it's just trying to change our language, trying to change how we go about it. And the goal of it is that we are pushing society to change. Absolutely, we want people to have access to great wheelchairs so that they can be as mobile as possible. We want people to have surgery or treatments that make them feel better. We're not in any way saying that there shouldn't be medical elements to disability. But what we're saying is that inherently the responsibility should sit on society to be more accessible rather than for disabled people to hide their disability, hide themselves away, which is what used to happen when we used to put disabled people in institutions and keep them separate from society. Um, kind of we've learned better. And so when you go in that support work world, it's about knowing how you can best support somebody, and definitely considering the language that you use. So when we talk about, well, often asking people what language they like, but not defaulting to terms that imply that somebody is sick or somebody is broken, and instead kind of going, well, how can I help you? What assistance can I provide? If they want assistance at all. So having that framework, making it clear in your mind that actually what we're trying to do is change attitudes, to change the physical environment, to change the system, and then to help the disabled person to navigate in the reality that we've got today, because we're by far not perfect just yet. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's you, Olivia.
Yeah. Well, part two. Where do you fit? I believe this is your section, Angelie.
Oh,
So you're welcome to keep going.
okay. It is my section. Look at that. Okay, so now we're talking a little bit more about how support work works. So what we're going to do is we're primarily talking about support work in an individualized funding space, because that's where we work. But most of this applies to all the settings. So, individualized funding is a scenario where a disabled person or their family get given a pool of money from the government that says, to help you meet your disability needs, here is some money. Do it the way that's right for you. And there's systems and checks around that. Organizations called hosts who run payroll. Um, so it's not like a disabled person's kind of left entirely on their own. But what happens in individualized funding is that disabled person gets a lot of choice and control about how they receive their disability supports. And that's a wonderful thing for people who like their support in a particular way. Really great thing when people have um, particular interests, particular needs, particular cultures, particular hours. It gives them the ability to get support the right way for them. Um, but it also does create some extra paperwork and drama for them. So it's a bit of a balanced story. But what it means for a support worker is that you are directly employed by the disabled person or by usually a family member. The role is not necessarily a family member. They're called the agent. Um, but it means that you usually work in a one-on-one setting, and you usually work in the person's home or in their community setting, wherever they are, if they want you to help them at work or at the library. Um, so that's often a way that disability support happens. And then another key piece of this for us is like who does disability support work? And some of you will already have jobs as support workers, so you. But it's very much about you knowing yourself, knowing what feels natural and normal and comfortable for you, and getting to understand what is the right kind of support work, to use your skills best. So it's often there's a list on the screen of kind of disabled people who can't work full time are often support workers. Lots of people are drawn towards it for that sense of familiarity and contributing. Lots of university students. We get a lot of applicants from first year psychology students who are looking for support work. Um, but also, we really encourage people who like flexibility, who like diverse tasks, who want shifts that work around their lifestyle. But most importantly, it's people who enjoy seeing others thrive. If you're going to come to work and be passionate about making a difference, be able to come and be excited about being able to make somebody's day brighter. That's first and foremost what we are looking for in a great support worker. Is that all the other pieces depends on who you're matched with, depends on finding your place in your jam. But fundamentally, the people who come to work and are excited for whatever difference you can make, building a relationship, getting to know people, and getting to see them thrive in their own way, is the thing that makes support work really, really the right role for you. Um, but I guess at this point, I want to tell a story about not all support work is the same. And Olivia's going to give us some examples in a second. But for me, I was a support worker when I was 19, for about 5 years, I think. And in that space, I was supporting a man who had this phenomenal passion for V8 racing. And I am not a car person, and I have never been a car person. And I loved my job. So I would show up every week greatly enthusiastic about being a support worker. And I actually had a group of about 12 people that I was supporting on a Sunday. And my job was to talk to all of them, work out who wanted to hang out with me, what we wanted to do, and go and do something fun. That was my job. Take them to do something fun if they wanted to. And every week I would show up, and this guy would be like, "Can we go see the V8s?" And most often my answer would be, "There are no V8s on." And sometimes we would drive the 60 minutes across town to go and look through the fence at the empty racetrack. And he loved it. He was over the moon that somebody would drive him that far to look at the empty racetrack. Um, And some days we got to go and actually see cars. Those were better days. And he would be so, so excited. And we'd have this chat. We'd be sitting there, we'd be watching the cars racing past. And I just didn't know like, how to talk about cars. I didn't know anything about cars. And I'd be like, oh, that blue one's going real fast. And that was the best I could offer him. And we got on fantastically. We had a great time. And I thought, I am nailing this support work stuff. And I was. He was over the moon. Everybody was really happy with how we were going. And then I changed roles and I didn't work on Sundays anymore. And somebody came in and her husband raced midget cars 20 minutes down the road. And so within about 3 weeks, he was in the pit crew of the midget car races with all the people with the tools and doing all the things, which is actually what he really wanted. He had people who could talk about cars. He had people who could tell him about engine sizes and stuff that I couldn't have pretended to if I wanted to. It didn't mean I was a bad support worker, but there was this wonderful potential of sharing a passion and being in the right place at the right time. Still wasn't V8s, but he got something from that support work that I couldn't have given him. And so for me, I guess when I look back on what I like as a support worker, I learned there's topics I know nothing about, and I can be enthusiastic about them, but I'm never going to know cars like car people. I learned that I am a do things with people. I love to help people experience stuff and go out in the community and try new things. And I learned that actually I'm not very good at those hands-on practical tasks of cleaning, um, and personal care stuff. I can help when I'm needed, but it's not the thing that I thrive on. And so I learned this is the support work I love. This is the support work I don't love. And this is the place where I can be pretty good, but I'm not magically talented at. And if you as a support worker can learn some of those things, it might be really helpful to know how you can bring your best self to the job, how you can add the most value. But also sometimes just showing up and being there and being a reliable presence in their life is what we're going for.
Yeah, thanks for that. And yeah, I always love that VX, right? Um, but yeah, so we've got some prompting partai or questions in the purple boxes over the next couple of slides, just to help you think about yeah, kind of where you might fit and who you might work best with as a support worker. And so yeah, because some environments might require a qualification, but in individualized funding support work, qualifications really depend on the person that you are supporting. And this might be because of the intensity of needs, or for example, a parent hiring on behalf of their child might prefer to see a qualification, and that's fine because they are the captains of their own ships. And when you're thinking about the people and the place that you might be working in, it's always good to remember that disability is experienced differently. No two people experience the same disability the same. And because disability is a spectrum, or some people might describe it totally differently. And for example, like a neurological disability in children will look different in an adult, or a newly physically disabled adult who suddenly needs a wheelchair will have different support needs to a teenager who has been in a wheelchair their entire life. So even if you're quite happy to support everybody and anybody, it will just be good to yeah, consider the different levels of support that people with differing disabilities and age range will need. And so, for example, like a I was supporting an adult who was a wheelchair user their entire life. Um, and so they already knew like what they needed. And so like I was just able to basically just get some training with them, and then they were like, all right, I need you to do this, this, and this. And whereas in another role where I was working with Care on Call, um, that was where I was shifted in multiple people's homes, and there were like there was this one person was who had had an accident, and so they had to suddenly learn how to use a wheelchair, and they didn't necessarily know like, oh, I just need you to help me go to the bathroom, or I need you to help me shower, and so those different kinds of needs will depend on who you're supporting, what stage of their life they're in, and even just things like being newly disabled or having that disability their entire life. And so, yeah, there are multiple places that you can work in someone's home, in the classroom, in a rest home, or multiple homes, and then even in the community. Like I was supporting my boss to go to work and to get to parties and to I was able to travel with them to go to conferences across New Zealand, and that was really fun. And so yeah, there's just so much range. And but you could be just a home support worker, or you could even be just one who, like if you're based in Auckland and the person you're supporting is in Wellington, and then they travel to Auckland, then you could be their support worker there. So there's so much variety, and yeah, it's really great. Next slide, please, Ainsley. And yeah, so these are some support worker roles that obviously not an exhaustive list. It's a very small list. There's so much more, and that really depends on what that person needs. And so it's quite good to know, like what Angie was saying, what you do and what you don't want to do. Like, for example, um, like when I first got into support work, I was like, oh yeah, I'll do anything because I didn't really know what I was signing up for. And for the most part, I was quite happily willing to do anything. But there are some tasks that I'm like, oh yes, I would much prefer to do that. And other tasks I was like, oh, why did you ask me to do that? Why can't you get someone else to do that? And so, and that really affects like the work environment and the person that you're working with. And so, for example, if you don't like housework, maybe don't go for a role that means caring for another household. Or you might be that person who loves doing housework for others. So if that's you, you should go for it. And more often than not, a support work role will include several tasks and responsibilities. For example, as I said, I was able to travel with my boss. And so in my everyday, well, not every day, but in my regular weekly shifts, I would be at their home. I would be helping with personal care stuff and feeding their cat and helping them get to work. But then while we were traveling, I was I was doing all the navigation. I was making sure that like the taxi was on time. I was checking into the hotel, and I was just doing all those things that so that I was doing all those things so that they could just have the best experience that they could have. And so yeah, there's so many different aspects that sometimes you're like, oh, I didn't know support work was this. But yeah, it's really fun to get to know what you do and don't like. And if you're like me and Ainsley, who we kind of fell into the job, like that learning is something that you pick up along the way. And that is, for the most part, a lifelong journey of learning what you do and don't like. But it is good to have a general idea of who you might want to work with and what environments and what tasks should be comfortable with doing. And so, and also like, um, if you're supporting someone who has hired you through individualized funding, it's it's most often the case that you will be seeing them on a regular basis. So it is really good to have something in common with them, like what Ainsley was sharing with the V8 car racing story. Like it is really useful to have something in common, because it's really easy to get lost in support work. It's just like a oh, I have to go do this. I have to go to this person's house and do this and do that. And I mean, maybe you're not like that, but I certainly was like that. Um, and so having something in common with the person that you're supporting can be a really good, like, kind of anchoring, um, yeah, just an anchoring connection between you two. Because really, you are two people just trying to make something work. And a support work relationship is just as important as any relationship. And so, yeah, that that connection could be something as simple as being queer, or being a parent, or being a cat parent, having cats. I connected with my boss about that. And also, yeah, so yeah, just encourage you to um yeah, look for jobs that you might have something in common with someone. Or even if you're in a job already and you're like, oh, I actually don't know if we do have something in common. You could ask them, like, oh, what's something that you like, and maybe you might find something in common with them. And that just might make things a little bit you know, nicer and all that. So yeah,
Awesome.
okay. My rambling.
Thank you, Olivia. The last little model that we wanted to talk about before we kind of stop and have some conversation is this concept of the tasks that you do with the disabled person and the tasks that you do for the disabled person. And support work, it usually fits in one of these two categories. So there are some things that you do with a person. So that's things like if someone's trying to learn how to cook, you're in the kitchen with them, you're cooking alongside them. If someone is trying to learn how to catch a bus, if somebody is able to do lots of a task, but they need your help to do pieces of it, then you do a task with that person. But there are also some tasks that disabled people might get you to do for them. So if a person has chronic fatigue and they're out of energy all the time, then they might get you to do the cleaning for them. They might send you to the supermarket for them because in those instances, getting you like putting the energy into doing it with you is not worth the outcome for them. So it's quite helpful to know whether A, you like doing things with people or for people as a support worker, but also when you are talking to the person that you are supporting, having that conversation with them and knowing that this might not be the same across all days. Things like chronic fatigue, things like people who have kind of sensory overwhelm, and just in fairness, all people have days where they've got far more capacity to do things than other days. And so what we need to do is also be aware that it might be on Monday and Wednesday we can cook together because I would love to learn how to cook. And Mondays and Wednesdays are quieter days, and I've got more capacity to do that with you. But on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I need someone to cook for me because those days I'm like, I've had a really big day at whatever I do and I'm tired and I don't have that energy available. So, having that kind of awareness and being able to particularly talk to your employer and say, is this something you want me to do with you or is this something you want me to do for you? And if their energy and capacity fluctuates, it might be helpful to have a way that you can do that quite simply. To be like, oh, is today a cook for you day? No worries. And then there's no confusion because the danger when we go back to the disabled person as the captain of the ship, when we do things for someone, we run the risk that we go, oh, here, you give me the map and you give me the compass and I'll tell the people what to do. And suddenly you've taken all of the captain's things upon yourself, and you're only the captain in title. So when you do things for someone, it's about being aware that you're doing that. And there's a difference between cleaning for someone and taking away some of the things that they love or some of their decision-making autonomy. So it's being really cautious about why you are doing things for someone, and making sure that you constantly kind of come back and check that that is the right thing. Sometimes it's really simple. Like I say, things like cooking for someone is usually quite a, um, they'll tell you you just do it today and they won't be in the kitchen loitering. But other things where there are decisions to be made, where there are big, tasks or conversations to be had, it can be really important to check in, like I supported a young lady the other day to go to the bank. And she just needed a new FPOS card. And before we went in, I was like, okay, so what's my job in going in here? And so she was like, I need you with me, but I think I can do it. And so my job was to stand behind her and look innocent and helpful. And she had the whole interaction. And I was there, and the only bit was that she got stuck because they asked her for something, and she went, I don't have that. And so she looked at me, I gave her the answer, and then she could go off and do the rest herself. So it's just those little bits of being able to be clear. She didn't want me to do it for her. There were other things that I have done for her, but she didn't want me to do it for her. She thought she could do it, and she just needed my backup. So having that difference, having that clearness between doing things with someone and for someone helps you make sure that they stay as the captain of their ship. So we go back to this. We go back to ensuring that the captain has the tools that they need to be the captain. And one of the biggest things that comes with being able to be a great support worker, to put all of these philosophies and frameworks into practice, is so next week's workshop is around communication and some of the things that we should be aware of in that space. But the goal of all of these workshops is to help you understand your role as a support worker. If we go back to what Olivia said at the beginning, that in that top left-hand corner, there's a nice person standing on the dock with their little basket. That person is the person looking for a support work job. And so coming in with some thought and some knowledge about what you're bringing and what you love to be as a support worker, what your skills really sit with, can help ensure that when you join anyone's support crew, that you do that in a way that is going to help build them up. And those principles of mana enhancing and self-determination and person-centered, giving them the support to be their best selves is what we're aspiring to as support workers.